Welcome to the Answer is Yes podcast, where we interview some of the most interesting people that have said yes to opportunities in their life. We hope that through these stories, you can learn to create your own destiny by saying yes along the way. Join us as we explore the new series covering topics such as passion, integrity, and hard work. I'm your host, Jim Riley, and I hope you enjoy these interviews as much as I do. I believe that everyone has an important message worth hearing. Hello, and thank you for tuning in to the Answer is Yes podcast. Been a great couple of weeks of wonderful guests and comments and all the above. Our Young Entrepreneur Syndicate membership for all you aspiring entrepreneurs, young adults, and if you're young in heart and spirit, we'll take you too. It's good for everybody. I think we've got a couple of people in their late 50s and early 60s, but we're just having a lot of good times in there, as well as we push out a weekly podcast, my partner Rod Kuntz and I, and you'll see that titled differently, and there's actually a different image, and that's really kind of 20 minutes of entrepreneurial stuff, soft skills, hard skills, and all those good things. So thanks for tuning in and your comments. I was in New Jersey a couple of weeks ago, and maybe you've heard me talk about this trip a couple of times. It's really, I don't leave Montana, and by intentionally, I don't leave. But I was convinced that I needed to be out in New Jersey by my friend Ryan Robbins. He was having what he called the event New Jersey. And, I got out there and I met some wonderful people immediately. The first lunch event on the, day before the big main. And, I just kind of bounced through the weekend meeting so many great people and learning about what they're doing. What was cool to me is whenever I mentioned New Jersey, people are like, oh, they're rough out there. People are hard to get along with. Everybody I met was awesome. But I did think it was interesting that everybody amongst the group was like, wow, this isn't typical New Jersey people. Like everybody's been so nice to one another. So anyways, I've got a good memory from out there, and I probably met 250 or so people. And one of them I've got on the show today, and I've got Matt Williams here with his wonderful company, Triaxle. Matt, thank you for being here.
Tim, awesome to be here. I appreciate you inviting me on.
You were one of those guys. You were at everything over that weekend.
The only thing I didn't hit was the real estate luncheon. I didn't make it to that, but yes, I hit everything else.
I was still a little shell shocked. I mean, I got up, I called my wife. I'm like, what am I doing here? She's like, I don't know, but you better go to that luncheon thing. That's Red Suit. And you got to spend some time with him. I thought it was a great way to kick off the weekend because, that was Red Suit's event and the room was full, probably 70 people. And he walked in, he just owned the room, quieted the masses, said what he had to say, and then he just rolled from there. I was like, all right, this could be a good weekend. I like his style.
Yeah, no, it was a great weekend, and he's got a lot of energy, and the whole weekend was full of energy. It was a lot of really awesome people, and it was just one thing after the next, and like you said, a lot of great people.
We're going to talk about your company, but did you meet anybody in particular that stood out, or in a business that stood out that you thought, wow, that's cool? I didn't think I would know anybody or meet somebody like this.
The one that kind of stood out to me was Mike Fallett. He's a pretty awesome dude, and I never really, he's got a really interesting business model and what he's doing to help people write books. And I saw, you did one with him. I'm actually most of the way through it, and I thought that was pretty neat. It's just a business model that I never really paid attention to, knew was out there, and what he's doing to give people the opportunity to very economically and very easily, publish their story and get a book out, I thought was pretty cool. And that was just one of many examples of some pretty cool people that I met and some pretty unique businesses.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought him up because he was one of the reasons why I went out there. Between him and Red Suit and Ryan, 3 people that I had a relationship with online, but I'd never met in person. And what Matt's referring to is Mike is basically a ghostwriter publisher, and he will help you write a book and get it published 90, 120 days, depending, on how aggressive you are. But, Matt, it's one of those things. I've wanted to write a book for 10 years. And I've sat down and you get the writer's block, or, you write a few pages and then you put it aside and you don't go back to it ever. And he was in the Arte Syndicate with Andy Frisella and Ed Milet, which I was a member of. And we met each other there. And I saw his bio. I'm like, oh, ghostwriter. That's something I want to write a book. And I reached out. I said, Jim, this is how it works. He says, we're going to get on a series of Zoom calls. You're going to come up with 16 stories with 16 lessons in life that we're going to record and we're going to build out into your book. So put some thought into it, right? Do your homework. And then he kind of sent over these worksheets to really kind of dig into it. And he starts giving you direction to pull it all together. And I think mine probably took 4.5 months or so. But what was cool about it is we did all these Zoom calls. He's like, great job. A few weeks later, he sent back what they call first draft. And so I went through that. And that's really where all the hangup was, because I really wanted to dig into it. My wife read it. She goes, well, this is good, but I want more of your voice in there. I want a little bit more of your trials and tribulations. So I spent some time probably rewriting about 20% of it to give it that real voice of mine and be honest and authentic. But what was cool is he came up with the titles. He came up with the colors of the cover and logos and all that based on what I told him I liked and what I was interested in, all these things. It was like he was reading my mind. So the man has some talent. I'm glad you met him. And, he delivered. So, that's all what we were looking for.
100%. Yeah, and one of many people that I met, but it's an interesting concept, and you know, maybe I'll jump on with him someday and attempt it, and maybe I won't. But if I were to ever write a book, it would never happen on my own. So
Well,
his model would be perfect for me because it would help ensure that I got it done.
there you go. That was my approach as well. And by the
Yeah.
way, Red Suit Realtor, who's out there, who I wanted to meet, he basically uses his book like it's his business card. So he just carries a bunch of books around. And if you meet him, he's like, here's my book. And basically
Hmm.
he's got his phone number and email in there. And now you get to know the man that you might do business with. And in his case, that's real estate. So there's a lot of ways that you can use a book, especially how you present it. So, hey, you never know. You could be
Sure.
next.
Never know. Someday, for sure.
Yeah. Well, look, I want to hear about you. I want to hear your story. And then I want to dig into what you're doing at Triaxle. So could you give us just a little background on you and, where things started from you? Were you always an entrepreneur? Did you learn from your parents or did you go to school? What'd that look like?
Sure. So I I've always been, I guess, ambitious and willing to work and wanting to work. I had some, smaller odd jobs before, I turned 16 and had my license. But once I had my license, the very first summer that I had my own vehicle and a license, I went and worked for a contractor. I always had an interest in construction. I was always very hands-on, taking my dad's tools out of the garage and building things in the backyard, doing projects around the house. So I always just had that interest, and my parents didn't hand me money. So if I wanted something, I had to earn it. So I took it upon myself. I was not forced to get a full-time summer job, but after my sophomore year, I just went to work the very next day for a contractor. I worked all summer long, and then the next year I did it again, and it just kind of drove me to keep learning. And whoever I was working with at the time, I was never really satisfied just sweeping floors or pulling wires. I was always asking, hey, can you show me more? I want to learn more. And that was always my attitude. I wanted to learn how to do everything that was going on the job site. So
That's,
without getting too far into the details of that, um, I always worked, throughout high school, and then I ended up actually going to Montana State in Bozeman for
mhm.
1 year of college, and I didn't have a direction. I didn't have a goal. Like I didn't know what I wanted to do as far as school. It was 2000 that I graduated high school, and at that time, and it was kind of like, hey, your next step is college. That's what you do, you know.
Yeah.
And I wasn't really a big believer in it, but I figured, I'll go through the motions. And a buddy of mine in high school, he had an interest in going to Montana, and I applied and got accepted. And like, the conversation must have been, hey, can I go to my parents? And they're like, whatever, you're gonna do what you want anyways.
So where were you born and raised at? Where did you leave to go to Montana State?
So I
To get to
am
that college.
I was born and raised in a little town called Clark Summit, Pennsylvania, which is about 10 miles, I guess it would be northwest outside of Scranton.
Okay.
So
And
it
I
was
would
a
have
pretty
to
long journey.
Yeah, and I'd have to say that Montana wasn't on too many people's radar at the time either. So, what made you say yes to that one?
I hung out with a group of kids that we were very active. We all skied, we were rock climbing, we mountain biked. I was with a pretty adventurous group of kids for that age, and we just were always into that type of stuff. And it wasn't my idea. The kid that I went out with, I think he had some older friends that were already going to that school there or had even gone and graduated from there.
Hmm.
And that's how it kind of came up. And I was like, shit, yeah, I'll go to Montana. So it sounds like a great time. You know, it was fun. So I tell people I majored in skiing.
Nothing
Spent a lot
wrong
of
with
time at
that.
Bridger Bowl.
Yeah, good
So,
for you, man. Good for you. So you said you were there for a year. Did that implode or you just needed a change of direction?
so I was there. I can recall sitting in. I never had a major. I was just doing my general core credits, and I recall sitting in, and it must have been like some sort of, class or workshop to help you, you know, come up with your direction. And I remember looking at anything from wanting to be a helicopter pilot to an engineer to a project manager for a construction company. And it was like looking through a book and just trying to pick something out of a book. And I'm like, I don't know what I want to do. I'm 18 years old. Like I can't, I know how to work. I know how to build things. And I actually spent quite a bit of time when I was in Montana. I actually ended up, getting hooked up with a guy, and I remodeled his basement. So while I was going to school, so I would skip class and I would go to work for him and put some money in my pocket instead. So I love Montana. I can't wait to get back someday. But actually wanted to stay after the semester was over and stay there for the summer. I couldn't get a job to save my life. I couldn't
Hmm.
get a job at a hoagie shop, bike shop, ski shop, construction. There was all the kids kind of just seemed to stay in town. So there
Yeah.
was no jobs available, and I couldn't afford to stay with that one. My parents weren't going to fund me. So I ended up coming back, and I worked all summer with a buddy of mine that I had worked with previously. And I think the time came like a couple weeks out to like pack up and go to school. And I don't remember exactly, but I think I just went to my parents and I said, listen, I think I'm going to take a year off. I think I don't know that this is for me. I feel like I'm not getting enough value out of it. And quite frankly, I don't think it suits me and I don't think I need it. And I think they were a little bit hesitant because they knew a year off probably meant never going back.
Yeah.
But they gave me the freedom to do what I wanted to do. And that's what I did. I just never made it back. I started working and started putting money in my pocket, and I really never looked back. I never really had the desire. I wanted to go back to Montana, but I didn't have the desire to go back to college.
Yeah. What was your dad like when you were growing up? You talk about being handy and doing all these things at a young age, grabbing that first job. Was he in an industry similar? Was he influential in what decisions you made, or was that your mom or somebody else in your family?
They were both very supportive as long as I was behaving. They were really they kind of let me do what I wanted. My dad actually owned a company called Williams Industrial Supply. So
Hmm.
it was a company that I don't want to get this wrong. I think it was his father that started it. So they sold like drill bits and dies to industrial, like manufacturing companies in our area. My brother and I spent a lot of time there as we were younger and terrorizing the place and messing up the racks and jumping into bins of packing peanuts and stuff. But then he transitioned out of that business and he went to the insurance business. And
Mm.
my mother worked for MetLife. So neither one of them, like, my father wasn't in construction. He didn't push me into the construction business. He just, he was kind of handy. He had some tools laying around the house, and the first opportunity I had to run a chainsaw and cut up some logs, that's just the type of stuff that I liked, and I always took to it, and I was always relatively good at it, I guess. And I lived in the shop classes, masonry
Mm.
and metal shop and woodworking. We had some really great programs at our school, so I would pick as many of those as I could and spend as much time as I could down there. And that's probably where I learned most of my skills at that age. Um, building things in those rooms, and I had some pretty great teachers that gave me some freedom and kind of let me kind of take it to the next level and go above and beyond what the normal projects were in class. They said, okay, we'll build a toolbox. And I would say, hey, can I build a weight bench? And,
Of
and
course.
they'd be like, you buy the material, you can do it. I'm like, okay, cool.
I,
So,
I love that.
you know,
It, think about the opportunity that kids are missing out on now in school. I mean, it just blows me away that they're not allowed to have these programs anymore. I remember metal shop. I think back, it's like, wow, they gave me a welder when I was in 8th grade, welding stuff. Like you said, can I build a weight bench? It's just amazing the crafts that we learned at a young age that aren't around anymore.
sure. It's honestly, I think it's sad. I wish it was not that way. I heard that our wood shop is now gone at our local high school. I'm not sure about the metal shop. I know the masonry program is still there. It's actually the same teacher that I had and I
Hmm.
graduated with. So I think those classes, I think they're necessary. There's a lot of kids that need that. They need that classroom setting. They need that structure, and they need that influence on them. And it's kind of disappointing that it's falling to the wayside. And we're hoping that if Triaxle it can be successful, I hope to help. I won't be responsible for bringing any programs back, but I want to help support the local kids in our area and let them know that there's a lot of opportunity in the trades, whether you can get it in the high school setting or you go to a VOTEC or a 2-year school after. There are opportunities. They might not be right in front of you like they used to be.
Yeah. And look, by the way, I appreciate your backstory because oftentimes we all think that we're unique or we didn't have or the opportunity wasn't in front of us or a parent gave us this. So I always like to spend a couple minutes on how you got to where you're at. So where we kind of left off is your parents are going to let you do your own thing. You're not going to go to college anymore. What did you jump into? Was it more construction and then get us into Triaxle because I'm so fascinated by what you're building with Triaxle.
Okay. Well, I'll try to keep this brief, but it's
That's all
it's been
right.
20 some years. So I left, I never went back to school and I was working with a friend of mine and we were doing construction and we were roofing, addition, siding, mainly like residential type work. And we actually were talking about forming a partnership. We went to see lawyers and we had the documents about ready to be drawn up. And literally like the week that we were going to go sign the papers and form a partnership, he told me he didn't want to do it. And he
Mhm.
said, he didn't think that I was bringing enough to the table, I guess, or I didn't have the skills or whatever. He felt like it was, his network of customers and his credit and his, he was by far more skilled carpentry wise than I was, but I was bringing like the business side to it, and
Mhm.
and he had the skills. So, anyways, he said I don't want to do it, and I was kind of devastated. I was like, man, what am I going to do now? I'm like, you know, uh, what am I going to do? And it was my mother that pushed me, and she said, start your own business. I said, how am I going to do that? I don't know how to run a business.
Yeah.
She's like, you can do it. You can do it. So she was definitely the driving factor for me, and she kind of just pushed me and she helped guide me. And I didn't know the first thing. I knew nothing. I knew how to do the work. I didn't know how to run a business. So I kind of just jumped in, with both feet and went after it. And I first started off, working for a roofing contractor that me and the other guy were working for, doing a lot of work for at the time. So I was able to immediately, have work for myself by working for him. That
Hmm.
lasted so long. And then we parted ways. And it was kind of weird. Like we kind of had a falling out over something silly. And he said, you're not working for me anymore. I said, I didn't want to work for you anymore anyway. So I'm not doing it.
I got my
But I
own
didn't have a,
business.
yeah, but he was the majority of my work. And then it was like, everything kind of happens for a reason. Then the day that I had that falling out with him, I went home and I'm like, shit, I don't know what I'm going to do tomorrow. and a family friend who I had given a price to do a roof for, probably 2 months prior. I gave
Mm-hmm.
him the price, never heard back from them. They called me that night and they said, "Hey, we'd like you to do the job. When can you start?" I was
Mm-hmm.
like, "Actually, I'll be there tomorrow," which which really isn't a good sign that you're any good at what you're doing if you can start tomorrow. But it was just phenomenal timing the way it worked out, and it just gave me, that night I
Yeah.
had something to look forward to, and it just snowballed from there. So fast forwarding, started off roofing. We ended up getting into building houses. Then we started buying equipment to do our own excavation work instead of relying on other contractors. And one thing led to another. And by the time I sold off, most of my businesses last year, we had a topsoil screening operation, a rock quarry that we were taking out Pennsylvania bluestone and flagstone products, and we were also crushing the waste. We had a paving and excavating division. We have a landscape supply yard, and we have a dock building division where we drive pilings and we build docks and boathouses on freshwater lakes in our area. So it went from roofing to what was known as MHW companies, a very diverse operation of many things within the construction industry. Um,
I got to
so it,
tell you, and you're kind of going into the tech space now or virtual space. We'll describe it obviously, but when I hear those types of companies, the first thing I think is now that is real business. I mean, you've got real assets. You're moving earth, land, rock. We've got a few rock quarries around where I live, and it's just like I'm so impressed with the magnitude of things that get done in that arena. Um, we don't have to go into detail on all of it, but how was the learning curve? Did you just keep falling into the next thing? The next thing you look back, you're like, wow, I got a lot of businesses here. Or, what was the inspiration to kind of not bounce around, but, have a variety of offerings?
I thrive on challenges.
Mm-hmm.
I like to push myself. Once one thing kind of became easy or on cruise control, I just quite frankly, I just wasn't satisfied in my day to day. I just needed more. So we went, the carpentry of building some houses and doing additions, kind of rolled into the dock building division. The dock building started in 2010. We worked at a local lake called Lake Winola here, and we were always being asked because we did a lot of work in the area. Can you build a dock? And I said, well, we could, but we don't have the equipment. So I kind of took a leap of faith and built a custom barge to start driving the poles into the ground. And from day one, we were busy. We
Oh,
were just we were just busy from day one, and it paid off. And that got extremely busy, and it kind of got on cruise control. And my foreman Casey took over and was running that operation for me and gave me the freedom to start doing some excavation work. And
mm-hmm.
the excavation work led into doing road work for local boroughs and municipalities. When we dug the roads up, we had to repave the trenches that we did. So we started doing small paving work, and then eventually we ended up buying more paving equipment and getting into that. And the rock crushing kind of came about. There was a local quarry, and I knew the person that was in there operating. And I had a small mobile crushing operation back in 2013 that didn't get any traction. So I had a little bit of the background, but by no means like did I know all the in and outs. But it was kind of just something I just wanted to do, and I wanted to supply ourselves with material. And I saw an opportunity to supply the local contractors with materials as well. So we started off in one quarry, and we quickly moved out of there and moved it into another location. And in 2 years, we built a pretty nice customer base, and we were doing well. And crushing rocks is a tough business, man.
Oh
It
yeah.
really is. The equipment eats rocks for a living. It breaks constantly. And when one piece goes down, you have $1 million or more worth of equipment just sitting there doing nothing because you might have a $50 part that broke on the first machine. And when that goes down, they're all down. So I learned a lot there. I learned, people are everything. The wrong people in the wrong positions can really be very expensive. Um, and the right people can really make your day. And, so that was kind of interesting. We didn't that for very long. We only had it for a couple of years before we sold off last year. Um, but it was interesting. And the paving side, it's just busy around here. There's just a lot of work available. So we were
Yeah.
busy with that from day one.
Lot
And
going on. But
yeah.
by the way, I've got a crusher cone in my backyard that we use for a fire pit because they're
Oh,
epic.
nice. Nice.
That's
Yeah.
that's the hot item around town because, like I said, we got some quarries around here. Everybody's like, "Did you get a crusher cone?" I'm like, "Yeah, I did." Yeah.
I never even thought about that for a fire pit. That's awesome.
Oh yeah, we bury them halfway, and so mine's 4 foot across, probably one of the bigger ones, I suppose, and it's indestructible. Puts off good radiant heat, and if you're worried about kids, you can put a circular thing around it so they don't get too close. But yeah, it's kind of a hot item; they're hard to get. So, anyways, maybe it's your next business is selling crusher cones for fire pits. To Ryan Robbins as he expands his pit. Um,
Yeah.
I love how your stories transitioned because I did some landscaping for a short period of time. And when I say that, I mean, I mowed some lawns and trimmed. And what's crazy is people have these limiting beliefs that they got to stay in their zone. And, listening to you say, well, we build docks, but then, we started putting in the poles and, one thing led to the next. That's exactly what happened in my landscaping business. Somebody says, well, can you do our sprinklers? Well, yeah, I guess I can. Let me figure it out. Well, then can you aerate our lawn? Or then, and one thing leads to the next. And I like hearing these types of stories because I want people to know that they don't have to limit what they do and to not have those limited beliefs. And like you said, you like to figure it out, and clearly you have.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I bought my first excavator because I couldn't wait on an excavation company to show up to dig the
Mm-hmm.
hole for our job. Because if they were a couple of days late or a week late, then I lost the mason that was supposed to be there the following week. And there was a snowball effect that just kept going on. So I was just in the business of making things happen and making sure they got done and kind of whatever it took. We made sure it got done, and then you have that equipment, and then all of a sudden you're digging holes for another buddy that's a contractor, and it's just kind of how it goes.
Yeah,
So
sure.
it
So
all go ahead.
you mentioned that you're starting to sell off those companies. So obviously you're getting ready for a major pivot.
I
and
am.
and let's get into what that looks like because this is what attracted me back in New Jersey to your story.
So going back to, we started a project in 2009. It was finished in 2010, and we hauled off 100 loads of clean fill. And we didn't haul it too terribly far. We hauled it maybe 5, 6 miles down the road, but it was just it was a cost to do that. And the very next day, the owner of a piece of land right next to the property that we were working on said, "Hey, I saw you guys are trucking out all this fill. If you have any more, I'll take everything that you have right here." And we literally could have, just taken the truck 200 feet away, dumped, and come right back, and could have gotten the whole haul done, in a quarter of the time. And
Mm-hmm.
that was the first time I was like, man, there's got to be a better way to do this. Why? There's got to be a better way. I have to know that this guy needs fill before I start this job. And so that was, 2009, 2010. And I didn't really think anything of it. I thought, it'd be cool if there's a better way. Well, someday somebody will figure that out and it'll happen. And as the years went on and, we started doing more work and traveling a little bit outside of our normal radius, the networking of clean fill was just a hassle all the time. Anytime you moved to a different location, you had to find a new site. And I would literally find myself like the night before we were starting a job, I would drive to that town that we were working in, and not far away, maybe 15 miles. And I
Sure.
would just drive around aimlessly and without purpose, looking for a site that I could take the material to the next day. Or I'd be making posts on Facebook, or I'd be calling somebody that's in construction that I knew lived in that town and said, just ask them, hey, do you know where I can do this? So it was really inefficient. It was really poor. And I started probably in like 2015 timeframe, started to brainstorm doing a website to network clean fill in our area. And I was very quiet about my idea because I thought it was good. I thought we had something. And I just kind of kept on it, and I was asking friends and family, what do you think about this? Would this be a good idea or would this be a bad idea? I was trying to talk myself into it
Mm-hmm.
and get affirmation from other people around me. And it became apparent that it could be useful, and there would be a need for it. And as the time went on, I started merging from it being an idea to something that, okay, I'm going to do this. And it started off again. My mindset was locally, and then a website guy that I was working with at the time. He's like, there's no boundaries on tech. You could do this wherever you want. And I was like, oh yeah, you're right. We can. Why do we have to be limited to here? Um, so literally a couple years went on from talking about the idea and then working with the local website guy to do it. And he was just busy, and we never really gained any traction. And he had done my other local websites for me. And it just wasn't really getting anywhere. And I was getting impatient, and I was getting a little frustrated. And eventually he came to me and said, I'm out. I can't do this. It's just not working out. I was paying somebody to start the back end work, and they were lying to me. It didn't happen. So I don't know what happened on his end, but he kind of came and said, listen, the I can't do this project for you anymore. It's just not working out. And I
Sure.
didn't really have like a solid plan with him. I was kind of just waiting to see what he was coming up with. We didn't really have a budget in mind. It was kind of just like very, very informal. But when he's told me he couldn't do it anymore, I was like, man, like I'm not going to give up. I have to make this happen. And my brother Doug knew that I was working on this, and he knew my frustrations, and how for years it turned from an idea into me actually wanting to do it, and just like really gaining no traction. So I called him, probably the day that I was told the project was off with my local guy. And I was talking to my brother, and the conversations with him continued over the next couple of weeks. And he's like, Matt, like, I'd like to help you do this. I think, I could be a great asset. And I don't know if he said that, but that's what I was thinking.
Hmm.
My brother's kind of like the tech guy in the family. I'm the rock crusher and the construction guy. And he's the guy that I call and say, Doug, I need to buy a new TV. What should I get? And he'd be like, oh, get the Sony, this and that. Like he
Yeah.
knows, he's my consultant. He knows everything. So in talking with him, he kind of gave me the confidence that I had a good idea, that he wanted to be a part of it, and we agreed to go partners on it. And as the brainstorming, kind of went on, with him, his outside perspective, not being in the construction industry, really opened my eyes a lot. I had blinders on. I had specific problems for me that were an issue. And he started bringing a lot to the table and say, well, what about this? What about that? That might not be your problem, but it could be somebody else's. So in all the years in business, I never had any partners. From the
Mm.
time that one partnership didn't work when I was 19 years old, I never really wanted partners. I like doing everything myself, and making my own decisions, wrong or right. I reap got the reward or the ramifications from it. So it was nice and refreshing to start working with Doug and having somebody that could bounce ideas off of, and we have the same values and the same goals. And it was really nice to have that kind of energy, and somebody else bringing that in. So where Triaxle is at now, a lot of it is a part to my brother coming on board. It's,
Mm.
it was my vision originally, and he'll admit that, but having him come in and bring his ideas and perspective, and motivate me to get off my ass and finally do this after first thinking about it going back to 2010, it has been a great boost. And he's a big part of why we're at where we're at now.
I like the story because it's real value for value. He knew what your shortcomings were and vice versa, and you guys came together bringing value to the table. But by the way, my dad used to haul rock and dirt and fill and all that stuff. But can you just tell my listeners what fill dirt is, clean dirt is, so that they know what we're talking? Because I know they've seen the signs.
Sure. So, I mean, clean fill is a generic term, but it's basically, it can be dirt, gravel, it can be asphalt, concrete, millings, basically anything that you're either excavating, milling, or otherwise removing from one job site. You need to take that off of one job site and find a home for it, because you can't have that for the grade and the elevation of the project that you're working on. So you dig a basement, if you dig a basement for a farmhouse in the country, you can probably take that dirt and just spread it out in the backyard and level it off nice. But when you're doing it in a setting where you have houses close together and the lots don't allow for that material to be spread, you have to haul it off site. And it's always it takes a network of people to move it. Um, it's a burden sometimes. One time you have to literally haul it 20 miles, and it costs you, fuel, time, money, days worth of work to get material out to get that job accomplished. And then the next job, you could have the same scenario, and there's a property 2 houses over that can use it for a retaining wall that they're putting in. So it's kind of like it's a lot of networking. It's a give and take, and sometimes you have to pay to get it. Sometimes you have to pay to remove it. Other times, it works out where it goes the other way. Somebody will pay you to take it from you, or they'll bring their machine and they'll come and load it and haul it out because they need it so bad. So it really it's kind of depends on each scenario how it works out for you. But certainly knowing what you're going to do with it when you bid a job is key, and it's big.
Major factor in your profitability. Well, my dad retired from the sheriff's department, and I remember him becoming a truck driver, and he hauled dirt. It was the best job ever. I'm sitting here for 4 hours waiting for him to load me up. I'm making $60 an hour. I'm making $1 a minute. I'm like, geez, Dad, that sounds good. This is in the 80s. Like, that sounds like a good job.
Yeah.
By 5 o'clock every day too. So, your business is connecting others. And so where are you guys at right now? Is the site live? Are you starting to push? Are you almost done with development?
Yes.
Where are you at?
No, we're live. We went live on January 4th of this year. So the app went live. So we have an app in the app stores. You just simply search Triaxle in your app store and it pops up. We also have a website, which is triaxle.com. But what happened was my idea of networking clean fill really evolved, and we realized what Triaxle is. It's a map-based networking platform. So if you need fill or you have fill, you can post it on the map, and people in your area can pull up their map and they can see all the pins of all the posts in their area. And what became apparent as Doug and I were developing this and had first talked about just the clean fill, the idea became that we can network everything in the construction business. It's clean fill is just one tiny little portion of the industry. And if we're going to build a map and we're going to have an app where people can come on and sign up, clean fill was so narrow, narrow-minded and so hyper focused, and there's so much more to it. So now what Triaxle became is, for lack of better wording, it's anything and everything in the construction industry that you need or have, you can network on our app. So if you need to find a porta potty company for your job site, you can find that on there. If you need to find a trucking company to move a machine for you, you just simply search Lowboy in our app and it'll pop up everybody that advertises that in the area. Roll-off containers, scrap yards, landfills. Construction industry is a very broad term, but anything that comes under that umbrella, with the moving dirt, development, building, framing, trucking, logistics, anything and everything that comes under the construction industry umbrella, we're networking on the app. So if you go onto our app, you'll see the list of categories from the different contractors that you can find on there, the different types of trucking companies. You can find a towing company on there to come pick you up if your truck breaks down in an area that you're not used to. So really, it's the network. What our vision is we want to connect the entire construction industry with visibility and transparency in a way that's never been done before. You used to have to source all these different, materials or components, via Google, Yellow Pages, Facebook, word of mouth, whatever it is. We're trying to bring it all into one easy to use platform so you can streamline your day, just have it, simplified and easy and right in front of you. And we're just getting started. We're just beginning to build a network. It's going to take quite a while to get the map full and spread the word and get everybody on. But our vision is when you go to start a job site or you're bidding a job, instead of driving around town looking for these things or Googling the closest hardware store, you can simply, pick a point on the map, and you'll be starting their job in that location, and you can click that you need from a lumber yard to a quarry to an asphalt plant to a roll-off container company to finding a subcontractor to do your concrete work, or find a roofing company to put the roof on the house that you're building. It's really anything and everything in the business, from residential to commercial to heavy highway. Our vision is to bring it all together, and then we want to just fill the map up with pins, and then you can go through and filter them down and organize only what you need and what pertains to your business.
So, not to get into the weeds here, and we'll start to wrap this thing up, but so this app, are people paying for that, or is this a free service, or what does that look like? Because I can see the tremendous amount of value and savings a company's going to get by using your app.
Sure. The goal is to make you more efficient and make you get the job done quicker, and hopefully get home to your family sooner, and enjoy your life, and still get the same amount of work done. Right now, the app is completely free. Everything, it's wide open, it's free. And we're still kind of, making some tweaks. We're not in a beta per se, but we're beta-ing our app. We've only been out for 3.5 months. We have about 800 companies on so far, 1,400 total users. We're cruising right along. The map across the country from East Coast moving out to the West is filling me quick. So our plan and our vision is to keep the network side of the app free. Always. We want you to come in. We want you to use it. We don't want you to feel pressure that you have to pay for a network that's not there. If you look at Northeast Pennsylvania, where I'm from, the map is just full. It's saturated.
Sure.
That's a great network, but there's still room for more. But if you go out to Montana or Colorado, there's only a couple users out there. So if we were charging you to come on, you're not going to find value in that, and ultimately you're going to leave. And we know that. So we want you to come in and use our network for free, but then we're going to charge subscription for project management tools that we have in there. We have a tool called Job Sites, where you can actually create a project and invite your employees and subcontractors in. You can communicate with them through there. You can import photos, videos, blueprints into it. You can keep all of your communication for that job under one specific umbrella, or one folder for that. We have a pretty awesome and very easy to use construction calculator in there. Very simple. I was very impressed with what the developers did based on the direction that we gave them. So we're going to charge for the tools, but we're not going to charge for the network. So you can come in and find value in the network and not necessarily pay us for anything, for any part of it. We're going to implement some advertising into it eventually. We have some bigger companies, even just in our area, that were very excited to see the app, and they said, "Hey, when you're ready to advertise, let us know," because we have their target audience right there. Yeah. So we're working on a couple feature implementations to put some advertising in, but the goal is to keep the network side free. And if you choose to pay us for the subscription for the tools, great. If you find value in the ads and you click on them, that makes our advertisers happy. But we want it to be clean and simple and easy to use. There's nothing worse than getting on a website or an app and it's just full of pop-ups and you're just overwhelmed with all the junk going on. And we refuse to do that. We want our experience to be pleasant, and we're keeping that in mind with everything that we do.
I love it. It's funny. I'm listening to you talk. At first I thought, yeah, I probably know one or two people this would play into. All of a sudden my mind just wandered, like, yeah, I know this guy. I know this guy. Probably, I would say at least 20 people in my network could use this app right away, including one of our biggest rock quarries south of town. I'm like, oh yeah, Tanner, of course he could use this. I love what you're doing. I love the innovation that you've created and the solutions for people. I could even see the average Joe that's doing a home project looking and using your app to find out where things are at, because we certainly don't know. We're not in the business of knowing. And, I was so fascinated when I talked to you. So Matt, thanks for sharing your story and thanks for sharing what you're doing. And I look forward to, following the story a year from now and seeing how big you guys are. And, maybe I'll see some stickers heading down the highway on the back of some construction equipment that they're using your stuff, so I appreciate that.
That'd be awesome. Yeah. That would be awesome. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to listen, and I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Matt, I think it's a great story of innovation, progress, how you took one thing, simple job when you were 16 into the next and the next. And I hope that we can inspire people to do the same. Don't live in that limited society. Reach beyond those walls and know that you can do much more. Matt's proof of that. And there's no doubt, listening to your other businesses, that you're going to crush it in this one. And pun intended, I suppose. So good job. Hey, we'll put in the show notes the name of the app, and I would encourage you to go out there and get the app and support Matt and know that it's going to be a great tool. So, brother, thank you for being here today.
Awesome, Jim. Thanks for having me.
Listening to today's show. It is my pleasure and honor to interview all of the guests that have been on the Answer is Yes podcast. If you have enjoyed the show, please go on iTunes and subscribe, give a rating, or simply tell a friend about the show. We also believe in the message of our guests and the positive influence of their stories. As my own mentor and coach, David Meltzer, has taught me, spend some time every day thinking and writing about the things in your own life that you have more than enough of. You will find out how blessed we really are. Please visit my website, livelifedriven.com, for the latest updates about me and what I'm doing. Plus, I post a monthly blog about the many topics on this show. This podcast can also be found there. As I learned early on in life, what you believe is what you will achieve. Thanks, Mark Victor Hansen, and thank you, and have a great week.